Hey everybody, it's Leon of Body Mind 360 Health and Fitness News, and in today's special report I'm going to talk to you about keto diet basics. If you've ever been interested in starting the ketogenic diet, this video is going to succinctly provide you with the key information you need to decide whether this potentially is the type of diet for you or not. Check out all the details after the break. All right, so for those of you that are not familiar with the keto diet, short for a ketogenic diet, it is a diet that involves having a medium amount of protein, low or very, very low levels of carbohydrates, and high levels of fat. Now, for reference, I have included a link to an article from dietdoctors.com or dietdoctor.com, singular, that does a really good job of explaining this more in depth. But I wanted to cover some quick pluses and minuses to these diets that you want to consider if you're thinking about doing this diet. So the number one plus about this diet is that it's really, really good for weight loss. Once you get into the ketogenic state that I'll explain in just a moment, your body literally turns into a fat burning machine, and it is arguably the most effective way of burning fat, especially if you combine it with fasting. Now, the second plus to this diet is that because it is so low in carbohydrates, it's really good at regulating your blood sugar levels and quote-unquote hunger pains that come along with it. Not everybody knows, but one of the things that causes you to be hungry after having carbohydrates so quickly are those blood sugar spikes and then crashes. This is why you, for example, can have a bowl of cereal and half an hour later feel like you're hungry again and even more hungry, or a candy bar, for example. So it's really good at controlling that. So if you have issues with those hunger pains and cravings for sugar, this diet can really help regulate that. Now in turn, and aligned with that previous point, this diet is also easier to stick with in many cases because of the fact that you don't have those blood sugar spikes. So you don't have that blood sugar roller coaster where you're more likely to kind of fall off the bandwagon and cheat on your diet or go overboard because you do not have those same cravings. And finally, as mentioned in the first point, this diet is highly compatible and, in my opinion, the most effective when you combine it with intermittent fasting. That combination, intermittent fasting, especially prolonged fasting, plus a ketogenic diet, an absolute scorcher when it comes to body fat and also providing you with various health benefits. Now, it's not all roses when it comes to the ketogenic diet. So there are some downsides, and I want to make sure I cover those as well. The first reality of the ketogenic diet is that not everybody reacts well to a ketogenic diet. Some people, like myself, I react really well to it. It feels really good. Once I get used to basically fueling myself and eating primarily fats and proteins, my body feels good. My stomach is upset less. Just my energy levels are good. I don't feel sluggish. I don't feel bogged down and bloated. It works really, really well for me, as well as many other people. However, I have had clients in the past that did not do well on it. They didn't feel good at it. It did not work for them. I don't know all the factors that go into it, but I always tell people you can always try a ketogenic diet, and if it just doesn't feel right after a couple weeks, it may not be right for you. So another potential negative is the withdrawal period when you swap over to a ketogenic diet. So if you have been used to having a high sugar diet, lots of carbohydrates in your diet, when you withdraw from that, not everybody reacts that well. In fact, the first time I tried a ketogenic diet, I had a horrible withdrawal period. There was about a 24-hour period, about 2 to 3 days into it, where my energy was bad, my mood was bad. I was really craving carbohydrates. Some people get kind of the quote-unquote keto flu, as it's been dubbed, where you get a little bit of the sweats. Your just body is craving carbohydrates, and you are not a happy camper. Now, I did push through it, and I felt fine after about 24 hours of that. But that's a high danger zone where some people may give up and go back to the kind of carbohydrate lifestyle. Now, the second time I ever did the ketogenic diet, I didn't have any of that. For whatever reason, my body kind of knew what was coming. I adjusted and I felt fine. So your results may vary, but if you try and swap over to ketogenic diet and go really clean with really low carbs, just note that may happen, and you will get through it. Once you come out on the other side, your energy levels will be so much better. And again, with the vast majority of people, it's a good experience after that. Now, another potential negative, and there's an asterisk here, it's going to depend on your current health state. But if you are diabetic, or if you're on any medication rather for being diabetic, and or you are diagnosed with high blood pressure on medicine on that, then you're going to want to consult your physician before going on this diet. Outside of those two main categories, for the majority of individuals, this has been found to be a very healthy diet. The article that I linked also mentions women that are nursing. It's not the healthiest diet as well, or it's something at the very least you should be talking to a physician before doing. So those are the things you want to health-wise factor in. Outside of that, if you're a healthy adult, pretty much everything that I've read and the studies that I've seen have shown it to be a very, very healthy diet overall for the majority of people. Now, another potential negative, and this is going to depend on your situation, is the fact that this is a more quote-unquote expensive diet than a traditional carbohydrate-based diet. The fact is that carbs are cheap. You can get especially cheap, starchy carbs are very, very cheap. If you think about it, you can get cheap bread, you can get cheap rice, potatoes, very cost effective. Not so healthy, definitely not keto friendly. What is keto friendly? Well, obviously fish, the various methods of meat. A lot of the oils that are mono and polyunsaturated, they're going to be a little bit more expensive than, again, the cheapest carb sources. This is why, again, if you look at like fast food, high sugar, high starches, they're not going to be using the highest quality meats or fats either. Hence why fast food is just a bad combination of all the negatives. And if you want to go kind of a healthy keto diet, it can be quite a bit more expensive. Now, there are ways of making it more cost effective. It's not the end of the world, but just note that it is technically more expensive than if you were to just go with a cost effective carbohydrate-based diet. And the final potential issue, and again, this is going to depend on you and your capabilities, is that the variety of meals may be more limited compared to carbohydrate included meals, because it makes sense. We have been trained with the food pyramid to have carbohydrates to be a major part of our diet, so a lot of our meals are based around carbohydrates. You take those out and you focus on proteins and fats alone, with fats being the majority. There's just not as many easy to access meals. They're still there. If you're a little more creative in the kitchen, there are lots of recipes out there. But statistically speaking, if you're just saying pure amount of diet meals that include carbs, fats, and proteins versus just proteins and fats, obviously there's going to be a disadvantage there. If you're not capable or willing to cook some of the more complex meals, you're going to have a more limited palate. Now, some people are fine eating just a couple different type of meals in their diet, and that's fine. So other people are highly sensitive to that and get really sick and bored of the same type of food. If that's you, again, depending on your capabilities when it comes to cooking and food prep, this may or may not be an issue for you. That's a final potential negative. So obviously I do want to point out those points are not all equally weighed depending on your situation. Some of these may be a bigger factor or lesser factor for you. Okay, so those are the pluses and minuses of the diet, and I kind of told you some of the basics of what the diet is. Now I want to take a quick moment to explain how it works. So traditionally your body uses carbohydrates as your primary energy source and fats as a secondary source. Now you can have your body go into a state where you're basically burning fats as your primary energy source, hence a ketogenic state, but it only does that when it can, in your liver, turn fats into what are called ketones, which are a source of energy your body can use instead of carbohydrates. This only happens when your insulin levels are low, and your insulin levels are low when you have stable blood sugar levels. Hence, if you don't take in carbohydrates, your blood sugar levels will not spike as much, your insulin levels are going to be low. You combine that, especially if you combine it with fasting, but even if you just minimize the carbs or eliminate the carbs, you're going to eventually get into a state where your body says, okay, we're not having those carbohydrates as energy source, let's just change our primary method of getting energy by channeling those fats from storage into the liver, turn those fats into ketones and use that as an energy source. Once you get into that state and maintain that state, you can get more and more efficient over time, hence being in that ketogenic state, which then leads to that end result of burning more of that stored fat, that visible fat especially. You want to get lean, there's an amazing way of getting to that end result. One final note I did want to point out, especially when it comes to getting into a ketogenic state, is that our blood sugar levels increase no matter what we eat. Now, people tend to relate it to sugars because when you take in sugars or even complex carbohydrates, it has a much bigger impact on our blood sugar levels than if you were to eat fats or proteins. This is why actually fasting is the fastest way to get into a ketogenic state, because if you're not eating anything, there's no blood sugar spikes at all. But the second best thing to that, or in combination, is keeping those sugar and carbohydrates levels low. Your spike's going to stay to a minimum of the fats and protein intake, and so you're going to get into that fat burning state as well. So I did want to clarify that for you guys there. Now, do I recommend a ketogenic diet? Basically, short answer is yes. I think everybody that's trying to lose weight should try it. Now, will it work for everybody? Not necessarily. If you don't like the food products that have fat and protein in them, you're probably not going to enjoy this. One of the most cost-effective way to get high fats and proteins in your diet is red meat, for example. So if you don't eat red meat, it may be tricky. If you don't like fish, fish is a much higher quality of fat. You get the really omega fats there. They're going to be basically no carbohydrates, some protein and high quality fats. That's great. But again, if you don't like fish and you don't like red meat, probably not going to be the best diet for you. You can still get your fats in through oil sources, through nuts. There's other elements as well, but it's going to really, really limit your diet. So barring those two elements, not liking meat, red meat rather especially, not liking fish, if you're okay with those two elements, then this is a phenomenal option to try out when you're trying to lose weight. So I hope you enjoyed that quick by my standard and succinct by my standard video on a keto diet. Again, check out the link to the article that I referenced. They have more information there too, and some cool diagrams of the type of foods you can eat and the impact they have on your carbohydrate levels. And I hope that helps you out when you're deciding whether you want to utilize a ketogenic diet for yourself. So again, if you like this video, make sure to like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to be notified when new videos drop. And I'll see you guys next time on your journey to a healthier body and mind.